nice out today, so you had to walk.
Yeah, if I had to walk.
It's not so bad in LA.
See the weather's supposed to
It's supposed to be 60 on Wednesday.
It'd been like, what, it was Saturday, that would have sucked.
For the next month.
My kids are all riding
But I
bikes.
lucked out, we had a tournament in
That mine
Clare.
played on the trampoline.
Parking spot like right across the street from the door.
Oh.
I'll take that and
Oh,
park my happy rear out here for the next 6 hours.
Although we still have fist fights.
Call it good.
I don't know why.
yeah.
And that was, you know,
All Elliott's tournaments are in Marshalltown. He just plays.
doesn't seem to phase them.
He signed up playing like every weekend in.
We were in Traer last week, so it wasn't too bad.
But that was by girls, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. See, they don't have as many girls tournaments here in town.
yeah.
Just driving me crazy. That's just
I'm ready whenever you wait. Give me a couple minutes. Entirely up to you if you want to do that.
So the two amendments would be the Special Olympics recognition and
The Mark Perna contract? Okay. I saw that one just now.
I think they sent, Abby sent the recognition to Gabby Friday afternoon. Gabby was, well, she was working actually at Fisher, covering there. So it didn't get posted till Sunday.
Okay.
Sorry? Okay, yep, I'm good.
Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the time and the place for the February 19, 2024 regular school board meeting for the Marshalltown Community School District. Welcome to those of you here joining us in person. Welcome as well to anybody who might be joining us via the live stream or who's watching this at a later date or time. We'll do introductions of the board members here this evening before we get going. All of them to my right this evening, Zach Wall, Liz Wise, and Sarah Faltis. To my left here at the center table is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools. And to my right, Mr. Randy Denham, our board secretary. And I am Sean Heitman. We've got a pink sign-up sheet there on the speakers table for anybody who's here to address the board during public comment time. Please understand that you will be given 5 minutes to address the board. Iowa law prohibits the discussion of specific employees of the district or their job performance, and in accordance with board policy, board members will not respond to comments so that we can comply with open meeting laws. With those announcements out of the way, would you please join me in reading the mission statement of the Marshalltown Community School District? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And please stand as you're able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
Yes, we had two amendments to the agenda. One is our special recognition of the Special Olympics participants tonight, and the other is a contract in the consent agenda from Mark Perna of TFS to come to our district and work with students, present at Rotary, and also work with our community business leaders.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Faltis, Wall, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Abby. Hi. Hello.
All righty. So you might have seen on Facebook all the wonderful photos of our Special Olympics athletes competing in the basketball skills competition recently. Majority of those athletes will be representing Marshalltown as they head to state. Several of the athletes are here tonight along with organizers to talk about the Special Olympics program and the upcoming competition. So,
First, I think the athlete should come up here. So come up. We have over 30 participants right now.
Hey, real quick, could you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Susan Arifi. I am a teacher at Lenahan. And introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Maddie Sodders. I'm a teacher at the high school.
And I'm Matt Butler, PE teacher at Lenahan.
So we currently have over 30 participants for Special Olympics right now. We just had basketball, and we have 15 athletes that are going to participate at state in Coralville March 9th. And we have 4 that will be cheerleaders with 4 unified partners. And we're hoping to have several soccer teams and multiple track teams
Bocce ball.
that will be unified, and bocce ball also. So we have, you want to say your name or you want me to say it?
Hassan.
This is Dasan. Who are you?
What's your name?
Diego.
I'm Raylan.
Stand up.
My name's Jael.
Tony.
Tayden.
Tayden is one of our unified partners. So everyone here actually will be doing basketball. So they were very proud, and they all got medals, and Tony actually has his on.
Well, I want to thank the teachers who have stepped up to support this program from happening. As many of our board members know, we've had 2 or 3 occasions where we've had people from the community who have a vested interest come before the board about offering the program, and the district has never been anything but supportive of the program, but we have to have people that are willing to devote the time to the program. And so obviously the participation that we have, the success that these young people have had, makes it all worthwhile, and it wouldn't happen without you guys, so thank you very much.
Where's state held at?
State for basketball will be in Coralville.
Okay.
And then there's a cheerleading competition in Coralville as well, just at a separate facility.
Same day then?
Yeah.
How many kids will get to participate?
So there's 15 doing the basketball skills. They'll do like a run, dribble, shoot. So they do like a spot shoot, 10-meter dribble, and like a wall pass.
Yep.
And then our cheerleaders will perform 2 different cheers with their unified partners.
Perfect. We enjoyed them the other night at the basketball game.
They enjoyed playing basketball too.
Yeah.
There are some great pictures on the website of that as well.
Thank you.
I think if we can have the athletes come around and we'll all give them high fives.
Yeah, that sounds great.
High five.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Moving on to the consent agenda, we've got minutes from the February 5 regular board meeting and the February 12 special board meeting. Dr. Ryan, any items of note in personnel now that you've got food in your mouth? No, sir. Okay. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, there's an agreement amendment with FEH Design for furniture selection for the CTE project. A quote for new doors at a stairwell at Franklin Elementary School. An agreement for teacher education, clinical experience placements with Morningside University for the upcoming school year. A proposal from NAI Electrical to repair the electric service supply line for the concession stand. A proposal from True Green Commercial for lawn care for the school district. An amendment with Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services to serve students with disabilities. And an agreement with TFS to have Mark Perna present on Tuesday, May 7th. We've got special education agreements with Waverly Shell Rock and with Nevada Community School District. Questions about any of those items? Looking at open enrollments, there are 4, 1 for this current school year and then 3 for the next school year. Randy, anything to note in bills or the monthly financials?
No.
Questions for Randy in the bills or the monthly financials? Dr. Ryan, you didn't note it, but there was one item in the personnel agenda that pertains to one particular board member. There's a substitute teacher on there. Yep. You'll need to abstain from that.
Okay,
Liz.
I will abstain.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Faltus, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Well, the room really cleared out. You're up.
Assuming there's no public comment.
Well, there's nobody on the sheet, and
There's
there's
not. Okay.
nobody
You never
here.
know. You never know. So just-
No one here.
Somebody's sneaking around. You could have one. You could have an email one.
So good evening. This is the Marshalltown Learning Academy Annual Board of Education Update. I've done many of these over the years, but I think this is the first time I've invited some friends, so I'll have them introduce themselves.
I'm Jericho Whitaker. I'm the Student Resource Specialist at MLA.
Katie Mummert, English teacher.
So without further ado, several board members were at MLA just this past week for our tour. So we appreciate, I think we had 4 folks in attendance. Thanks for coming. We are as you noticed, a non-conventional learning program of the school district. We serve approximately, actually, I just checked today, it's about 106 students currently enrolled in our program. We have 4 full-time core teachers, science, English, social studies, math, 1 FTE of business careers and work-based learning, 2 special education teachers, a sliver of ELL time, an IJAG specialist, and a school resource specialist, which here is Jericho. So big rocks at MLA, things that we are really pretty focused on, and things that we have measurable power metrics on are the availability and participation in engaging authentic learning experiences. Katie will talk more about that later. Student achievement and growth. Most kids that come to us after having not been overly successful perhaps in a conventional system. So we work on them with improving their social, emotional, academic, and interpersonal skills. We measure our academic performance with our FAST screener, our AccuPlacer data. So when students are interested in taking a college course at MCC, they take the AccuPlacer, which then measures, in MCC's terms, their readiness for a college course. Iowa assessment data, and staff just engaged in training today around the administration of the Iowa assessments. We track college credits earned and overall high school credits earned in our program. We also pay very close attention to the number of students participating in a variety of SEL experiences and transition-related activities, which we'll talk about later. So one of our big rocks, again, to summarize really, is to engage in more authentic learning. Authentic learning really is an educational instructional technique focused on connecting students with real-world issues, problems, and real-world real-world applications. The basic idea and what I think we've proven through practice is that students are more likely to be interested in what they're learning, more motivated to learn new concepts, and better prepared to succeed in college and careers in adulthood if what they're learning in our program mirrors a real-life context. So we try to equip them with practical, useful skills, address topics that are relevant and applicable to their lives out school, and empower them with the academic skills to be successful after high school. One of the things we do for our students is we encourage many students as possible to engage in some learning around Agile Scrum. Agile Scrum is a project management framework that describes a set of meetings, tools, and roles that work in concert to help teams develop a structure and manage their work. This originated kind of in the software development world and in the big tech world years ago, but we have folks that come to us from AEA that are Agile Scrum trainers, and we actually provide this training. Our staff has all gone through the training. We also provide this training to students so that they have a mechanism to manage some of the project-based learning that they do. So that's sort of what a Scrum board looks like. So if you could play the video, Amy. This is a short little 40-second little TikTok. Oh no, maybe not.
It's not Taylor Swift, is it?
I wish. Do you have your computer?
Downstairs.
If they request, will it go to your phone?
Yeah. But I turned my phone off so I wouldn't be interrupted during my presentation. Anyway, take my word for it. It's a 40-second TikTok that shows 3 of our AEA trainers interacting with our students in a variety of Scrum situations, and I'll try to fix that access issue before I go home tonight. So anyway, pictures of what kids do and what they've done. The 2 students, we have 2 students on the upper right there that we're designing a way to get a higher quality of food to people who would be considered homeless or food insecure. They were talking about developing a bakery and fresh food repository for people who are homeless. So that was a very worthy project that they're working on. The students over here on the left are trying to find some resources to improve the Marshalltown skate park. So something that they decided to adopt as a project, but the project team canvases then show them what their short-term goals are, what they're to do, what they're doing, and what's done so they can chart that progress. And they would have, as they do this, either daily or weekly stand-ups where they would provide progress updates to their team members. Okay, other authentic learning experiences. This is a continuation. So if you were in the building, you saw one of the vertical hydroponic farming units working. So we have 11 learning modules related to this that are all aligned to the next generation science standards. You see the pumpkin vine when it was growing up and down there, and now it's kind of sprawled out on the floor. But flex farming like this uses 98% less water than traditional agriculture and 98% less land. So in a 28-day growing cycle, one of our units could actually produce 394 pounds of food in less than 10 square feet. So we have been growing some nutritious, chemical-free fresh food this year. I know we're still kind of experimenting a little bit. We're growing some sage. Some of our central office folks have had the opportunity to take a little bit of sage home. We bag it up and bring it upstairs. But we have grown some lettuce that students have eaten. And we've also grown and consumed some bok choy this year. So The job outlook for this is considered to be pretty high, and it relates to the agronomist, farm manager, urban farmer, ag and food scientist kind of pathways. MCC has a last dollar scholar program in the entrepreneurial and diversified horticulture pathway as well. So Katie's going to speak about another authentic learning experience related to Hamilton.
So we took about 30 students to see Hamilton in Chicago. And it was sort of a culminating activity attached to the project that I've spoken to you all previously about, but a quick refresher. They looked at it through the lens of a public relations, like media specialist, and thought about how does the media present these people from history now, how were they perceived then, socially and politically. And then they had to come up with an action plan how they would influence this person's reputation if they were alive today. So we just finished the class on Friday, and it went over wonderfully. This is the first time I've done this class, and the students, one of them just, I think, kind of sums it up perfectly. She had this moment and she said, oh my gosh, history is just like a lot of people that are really old gossiping. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, it is. And I said, you know, I think if I had that kind of revelation when I was in school, to look at it through that lens, like these are just people who were living their lives, and now we read about it and we get to learn about all of the awful and sometimes cool and weird things that they did. I think I would have been more invested in history growing up. So, but in terms of going to Chicago, it was a wonderful thing to see as their teacher. Once we got into the city, it got really quiet on the bus, and they were all looking out the window and taking pictures and videos of the buildings and asking questions about the trains and oh my gosh, why are all these people just like walking around? And we had some time, so we went down to the river walk and we took some pictures, and they were just in awe of how big everything is. Some of the students are like, I want to live here, you know, so it was, I think they quickly changed their mind though. When we got out of the play and they saw it, oh my gosh, it actually is busy because now it's evening and there's people everywhere and this might be too much. But a lot of them had never been to a city like that before, so that was cool. But then once we got into the theater, it's a very old theater, and it's beautiful inside. So they were kind of in awe of that. They've never, a lot of them, most of them, have never seen a live show of any kind. So they were just in awe. I don't think, we were anticipating, you know, as from the teacher side, like, we're gonna have to remind them to put their phones away, and we're gonna have to, you know, make sure they're awake. There wasn't a single student on their phone at all. During intermission, they just wanted to go and look at the lobby again and like buy souvenirs and stuff. So it was a really worthwhile trip for them. I think they learned a lot academically, but then also just about the world outside of Marshalltown. So we thank you for allowing us to get to go on that trip.
I think there's a couple more Hamilton slides if you would. There's part of the group. So other non-traditional authentic learning experiences. So we sent one of our students to the AEA, it's called Chestable, up earlier this fall. And Talon Seymour represented MLA, and this was a chess tournament that separated people into beginning, intermediate, and advanced categories. Talon competed in the advanced categories, and he's competing against kids who are identified as talented and gifted from all over the AEA, from Cedar Falls and Waverly Shell Rock, and he finished undefeated in all 5 of his matches, so winning all 5 of the chess matches. So he is very, very good. And we have another student who just moved in from Texas that started this week who's also now very, very good. So there's appears to be a challenge kind of in the offing here, I think. But just a really interesting way for him in a very personalized way to explore that passion and being supported by the school system to do that. So we're also integrating engineering principles into our math instruction. If you had a chance to get into the math room, you would have seen it looks like a big yellow cart, but there's a STEM cart, and students build a lot of things with our STEM cart and learn about equations and velocity, and bring those equations to life and bring the math to life by having them do some of the hands-on pieces, which makes the math much more meaningful for them. So a lot of that going on as well. Our students were recognized in August on WHO TV for creating the Marshalltown Mixtape, which is the promo for the Arts and Culture Alliance. So there's 2 different mixtapes. One is about 30 seconds long, and the other one is
A little over 3 minutes.
And this was your project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it came from just the students all of a sudden wanted to come up. They wanted to make a podcast, and at first I thought they were joking. They were not. They bought tiny microphones that plug into your cell phone. They're like, we got these for our podcast. And I was like, whoa, okay, let's have an actual conversation. So we met with Amber from the Arts and Culture Alliance, and she came and said, you know, what do you guys want to make? You propose something to me and we'll make it work. And so they came up with an idea of getting perspectives from people in different areas of the town, different demographics, business leaders, things like that, and getting them to answer the question, why Marshalltown? Why do you live here? Why do you choose to live here? Why do you choose to raise your family here? So it was completely student-led. They wrote out different interview questions for each of the demographics. They emailed people, scheduled these interviews, went and did the interviews themselves, recorded all of this information. I think some people here, I know they interviewed Shauna, and they edited it. I swear I teach English. And then they set it to some music. So then they had to go and present to the Alliance what they did, and it was, yes, they made this cool like glimpse into Marshalltown, but they also learned a lot about how to present themselves as professionals, and they took a lot of joy from having people and business leaders in our community look at them as other than students, but then also other than MLA students, kind of seeing them from a different perspective and through a different lens. And they took a lot of pride in that. So yeah, this is their little feature on the news. They're famous.
Okay. On Thursdays, we have some students engaged in some PLOs, which we call personalized elective learning opportunities. Pictured here is one of our students who has learned how to sew during this 1 hour a week time that we do. And if you noticed some of the window curtains in the building, those were all done by MLA students. So something else that happens. As far as apprenticeships are concerned, I wanted to highlight a couple of teacher and paraeducator registered apprenticeship program students. It's a new grant opportunity for current high school students and adult paraeducators to earn credentials as teachers, all while learning and working in the classroom. It's a way to address the teacher shortage. Really pleased that even as an alternative program, we've had 2 people in the last 2 years who are committed to this pathway. Abraham is on the left. He was a student board member last year. He is working at Fisher now, I believe. And Addie is committed to doing that. She managed to graduate high school in 3 years. And because she's still 16 for a couple of weeks, she can't start working yet. So as a paraeducator, so we're working to get her going there as well. So some MLA students go to 4-year colleges, but more do not. We're really interested in making sure that all of our kids graduate with a plan. Wanted to highlight some of the transition in coaching, career coaching opportunities that are available at MLA. I would highlight IJAG as being something that's been very successful for us. We are very happy to have some support from AEA for special education work experience services. It's been very meaningful for us. Go to the next slide. Why we're doing work-based learning. Over 50% of the jobs available in Iowa are middle school jobs, but only 32% of Iowa's workers have middle level job skills. So we are working to help our kids fill that gap. And so when we talk about a middle skill job, we're talking about a job that requires education and training after high school, but less than a 4-year degree. So work-based learning at MLA, these businesses have sponsored students in school facilitated work-based learning experiences this year. This is where our special education liaison has gone out to a business and has engaged them in helping us get a student placed. So thanks to those businesses. This does not include the more than 30 other local businesses that have MLA students working in them right now. So it's a pretty significant number. To give kids career experiences, we did take students to the program tour, the John Deere Tech program in Kalmar. And there's a picture of that experience. A couple of the students on the tour did not have photo releases, so I took a picture of the presentation and not of the students. We took students to business tours to the Principal Financial Group, which is on the next slide. You can see some of the students who went down to Des Moines to the Principal Financial Group. We try to remain locally as engaged as much as we can, but if you're going to come back and work at Van Wall in Marshalltown, you need to go to Kalmar and get that training. So, so we have a graduate who's doing that now and is now employed by Van Wall, actually over at the Tama shop. So it's been a pathway that has paid off for us in the past. And Jericho has been very patiently waiting for her opportunity to speak about social emotional supports at MLA.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, doing SEL in 2 different buildings, more traditional, and then over at MLA that's alternative, is just the building itself and the way we run there. I don't know, like when I do meetings at different buildings now, it's with bells and the 45-minute periods and all, all the students, it's just way different. I think if you walk in, you'll see each of our rooms are, they kind of, some have the lights off, some are very different, smaller atmosphere, and very individualized. So we do a lot of problem solving, collaborative problem solving, individual. We have yoga that can be done sometimes like at 9 o'clock is when we do yoga. We really use our agencies, outside agencies at MLA. They come in. Focusing on Me is one that I do with Jackie Ellenbecker from Juvenile Court. We did a girls group and then we did a boys group this year. They're always like wanting to know, what's this group about? I don't know if I want to do it. I don't want to talk with someone else outside of our school, but once they get into it, they really don't want to stop doing it, and they really enjoy having those outside agency people come in. We're going to be starting next week a healthy relationship group with CAPS, and they kind of are talking about kind of consent and what that looks like, knowing what your expectations are for a relationship. Megan Stein has done kind of a DBT group with some of our students that has been really, really helpful. Just using the resources we have in our community and bringing them in has been really beneficial. Wednesdays, we have a problem-solving meeting with, I'm there, Eric and Megan Stein, our therapist on site, and we kind of problem solve and see needs. of our students. Access has also offered to come in, and there's been a need for a lot of our students to meet with her. So if anything, we run out of room at MLA. It's been like the main thing is, okay, we got group going on in this room. We have YSS, we have Wild Spirits, we have Gracie May coming in, sometimes meeting individually with students. So where we're gonna put all those kids at different times has been kind of a struggle, but we're glad that they're there and that they're using those. One of the things that I've really enjoyed since Katie has come over to MLA has been the book club. So she kind of got that started, and I kind of joined in with her because it was a good way for us to kind of sneak some SEL stuff in and with some of the academic work. So I've enjoyed doing that. I think the students have really enjoyed doing that too. So it's been fun. Satusi, we use them as needed. They're always there, have been great to work with. One of the most beneficial things within the last couple of years has been having that on-site therapist, Megan at MLA, to do consultations with, to meet with families. It's really taking the stigma away from mental health services. It's somebody that they know, like they'll come in and talk to me, and they'll be like, I don't want to see a therapist, I don't need it. And then they'll talk about how depressed they are, or, all these different issues they have going on. And it's just beneficial to say, like, hey, why don't you meet with Megan? She's, you see her in the hallways, you've, seen her work with students, and it's really been helpful for our students too. It's just the way we work at MLA. So those things have all been really helpful.
Okay, that's the end of our presentation. I apologize. We colored outside of the time box just a bit, but.
Are there questions from anybody?
I really enjoy every year coming to your building. It's one of my favorite buildings to go to, and how you're able to meet the kids where they're at and not give up on them is huge. And get a 4-year high school degree is great, or even 3 years, and that girl's was able to do so. And I also appreciated being able to relate to kids, whether it be Taylor Swift or going to Hamilton, and relating the curriculum to the kids so they want to learn.
Thank you.
Well, I think after listening to the communication workshop today, I mean, there's some great opportunities for promoting MLA through the students and what they're doing successfully, either in conjunction with school or outside of school and that sort of thing. You've had some great success stories over the years for sure.
Yeah, I often think that MLA is kind of the best kept secret in this district, right? And I don't know why it's kept so secret, because you guys are doing tremendous work with kids over there, and I don't think that message is getting out the way it needs to get out. So
we are going to work on that.
Yes.
Sorry, Liz, go ahead.
I was going to say, as a new board member, I really had no idea what MLA. So during your when I went to the visit on Wednesday, I was blown away with everything that you guys accomplish with those kids and how you take care of them. And so thank you so much, because it's really you're making a difference in their lives. So a big difference. So thank you.
And as always, I appreciate you putting your appendix at the end of the presentation with all of the extra stuff that's really useful stuff that just doesn't need to be said every time.
Well, it's just really easy to say research says, and then slide right on that, but when you put 7 or 8 things there to support that.
And I think if you haven't been physically in our building, structurally, it might not make sense that we don't have class periods or bells. And so that can be like a mental hurdle for people to get over when they're envisioning what our day-to-day looks like. And as Jericho said, how that can kind of tie into our SEL. They're having to learn time management and choosing a place that works best for them. And so it all kind of, I think you really have to have a full picture of us to understand what's working and why it's working.
Anything else?
No, I appreciated the time last week. It was very good visit to the school, and everything today just kind of puts a bow around the visit last week. So.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift starts March 19th if you're interested in
I'm afraid my daughters will want to come to your school now.
I will not log that in the minutes.
I think you should.
No.
Go for it, Randy.
No. Well, I guess they're not my minutes. I guess if you guys really want them in there.
Well, good evening, guys. This is Valerie Corson. She's our Curriculum Professional Development Leader for Social Emotional Learning, one of the longest titles you'll find in the district. We're here to talk to you tonight about two of our core approaches, the responsive classroom approach and capturing kids' heart.
All right, so as you can see, in kind of our tier for SEL, we're really focused on that in universal instruction, core instructional practices. And the focus of today is really on the implementation of the approaches that we're doing K-12. The vision for our social emotional learning is through our SEL work in the district, our goals is to actively promote social emotional learning through providing high quality teaching and learning experiences.
One more.
One more.
One more. There we go.
We're trying to make up time for Eric going over.
Yes, always. We're trying to color within the lines, okay?
Did you want him to hear that?
So just a little refresher in the background. We talk about social emotional learning quite often, but where it comes from, where our work is really developed around is there's an organization called CASEL, and it's the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. They are known, I describe them as the national gurus. They're research-based, evidence-based, and school-focused. And their purpose was really to design what does social emotional learning look like in school systems to meet the needs of kids based on current research. Their work focuses on 5 domains, and they're self-assessment, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. During the 2020 legislative session, Iowa adopted their own version of those, where essentially they took the CASEL competencies and they just reorganized them. So they kept the same names, but they broke them out across grade bands, and then they put other indicators of what that would look like, which you remember from the summertime, if you were with us, I talked about the 263 skills that we teach K-12 in social emotional learning, and that's really what those are. So our core work is really around ensuring that every student has exposure to social emotional learning. And that means training all of our classroom teachers, all of our specials teachers, and all other support people in that work. Responsive classroom is where we begin across our elementary schools in Lenahan. It has 4 main practices that we focus on. And if Amy will change the slide for me. Thanks, Amy. They're positive community, effective management, engaging academics, and developmentally responsive teaching. One of the things that we love about responsive classroom is even though it's research and evidence-based, it was developed by teachers for teachers. And so people who have been in the classroom and done the work are really the driving forces behind this work. So the 4 essential practices within the system are we want to make sure that we have engaging academics. We want to make sure that we are focused on developing a positive community and helping kids understand they feel a part of their classroom, a part of their school building. We want to make sure teachers have skills in effective management. How do we work kids to keep them engaged and focused on their learning? And we want to have developmentally responsive teaching. we need to teach kids at the right academic rigor based on their age and their cognitive development. And so responsive classroom, once you have completed the entire system of the approach, there are 10 key practices, and I'm not going to read all those to you. But through the system, there are multiple years and multiple layers of learning that go on before you have this holistic system in place. When we went through and we were looking at how are we going to support our teachers and how are we going to support our kids, one of the reasons that responsive classroom really stuck out to us is the organization Castle, they do a research-based review of curriculums. What are people using that are finding effectiveness? And the Castle Select is their highest level. It would be like their platinum level identification. And responsive classroom is a Castle Select curriculum. So we have found that it has been highly effective in supporting kids, not only in our district, if you think about presentations like Anson did, Franklin has done, but we're continuing to see that growth across our other schools as well.
Hey, Matt, do you know how many of our teachers have completed the entire training process?
All 10 components?
Yeah.
Right now, we have 0 teachers through all 10. Anson Elementary is through 7 of them.
Okay.
So most of them are through the first 3 that we're going to talk about here in a second.
Okay.
And those are morning meeting, closing circles, and interactive modeling. And to explain to you what those are, I'm telling you, Amy, you're going to earn your work today. When we think about the goals of morning meeting, these are the first things that happen when kids come in the classrooms. And here we're really trying to set the tone for the day by helping them forget all the things going on at home and in their life and focus on that sense of becoming a productive student, engaging in their community, having an opportunity to share and learn a quick skill, and also do something that helps them remember that, like, nowadays kids are so connected to social media. There's so much in isolation. We want to bring them together and remind person-to-person interaction is great, and we're going to work on building friendships through that person-to-person interaction. On the right, it just shows that the Iowa competencies and which ones responsive classroom connects to in the morning meeting structure. At the end of the day, we have something very similar called closing circle. It takes about 10 minutes to occur. And in closing circle, we're trying to help kids get ready for that transition back. We want them to get their mindset on, like, how has their day been? What has gone well for them today? How are they going to go and be productive at home? How are they going to get on the bus calmly instead of running like a crazy person yelling and screaming on the bus? And again, reminding them that they're a part of our school system, they're part of our buildings, and they're part of our community. And then interactive modeling is the third component that we're really working on, and it's to teach routines within the classroom. We don't want social emotional learning to be something separate. Like, you don't go to a social emotional learning period. You know, the things that we are working on is all embedded into our instructional practices in the classroom. And we also focus on teaching those self-regulation and emotion skills. When they come up, how do they identify them, and how does the teacher build that into their instruction? And with anything, we need to know, what does our data look like? What does our implementation look like? So Val's going to talk to you a little bit about that.
So we're in the process right now of just evaluating our implementation for all buildings in the district. We have gone through a feedback and observation visit from Responsive Classroom in 5 of the 7 K-6 buildings. We have the other 2, which will be scheduled here in March. So 5 out of 7. I think the 2 remaining are Anson and Rogers, right? So when they do the walkthrough, and what we're looking for in the feedback and the observation of implementation is we're taking those core beliefs and those guiding principles of teaching, merging them with the 10 practices of responsive classroom. And so they focus, that's where they get the 4 areas, which is kind of the summarization, 4 main components of engaging academics, positive community, and the other 2. So when they come through and when we do this implementation walkthrough, what you're seeing on this grid is the way they evaluate the implementation is after the responsive training happens with teachers, then it begins like, what is, are we emerging in the implementation of those practices? So we have to learn those practices first, and then we begin to put those practices in place. So every school that has been scored so far is scored on that emergent to mid to a stable rating. Stable is really good, and it's very rare that schools even get to that stable mark in their first year. It's anticipated that you would be in that emergent to mid range your first year. Overall, scores of responsive classroom implementation is like our buildings are doing extremely well. We have a lot of practices that were already in place. We have really good effective management in our classrooms, rules and procedures. Our principals are, the structures that they're providing in the classroom are very evident, and we're seeing that through the implementation pieces. We can go to the next one.
So I don't understand what the bars mean.
That was my question too.
This
What's
one
the
up above?
scale?
Yeah, like what is this? What's the,
Right, and so if you take where we're at, what this will show you is like Franklin right now, this is their scores for the individual, the three at the bottom, the effective management, developing responsive and engaging academics. There is one with positive community, but I think I put the wrong one up there. So what it's showing you is collectively where they're at in terms of implementation. So
like 2.26 on what scale?
on a 3-point scale.
Okay.
So, and this is all of the different components combined. Really what this is going to show you is we have some buildings that are just, like even the consultant that came in and did the first round was blown away by how they're scoring. But all of our buildings are just doing remarkably well on that 3-point scale. So the first area that we have to look at for implementation is that positive community. So this is where students are coming into a classroom. They feel safe. It's a predictable environment. They are able to, see themselves and just being able to have that nurturing learning atmosphere. So on the positive community, this is where each one of our buildings that were scored on a 3-point scale, this is how they scored. Obviously Franklin at a 2.26, that is stable. So all of them were stable. And then we have a couple that were in the mid-range.
So who comes in and does that evaluation?
We had a responsive classroom consultant come in and do the first round of observations for us, and then we will do 2 more rounds. Matt and myself will go in and do the next 2.
Okay.
So let me back up. So part of when we purchase the trainings for responsive classroom, part of that training package is they will come back and they'll do the first round of the implementation feedback and the observation walkthrough. So we have had, Margie was her name from Responsive Classroom, came in and has done 5, and she'll be coming back in March to do the other 2.
So then, going forward, you'll have data to compare to so you can see trends. Okay.
Yep, and we will do 1 more observation before the end of the year, and then we'll do a 3rd observation at the start of next year. And then if we want to continue to do more, then it becomes a funding, and we have to purchase additional access to the tool that we use for this. That's neither here nor there, but that's coming later. So let's go back up to positive community. Again, that's where our buildings were scoring on the positive community. Let me read through. A couple of things that we really did well. Morning meeting, every single one of our buildings is doing morning meeting exceptionally well. I think we've been doing morning meeting before, even taking on responsive classroom. We do it extremely well with the academic integration. One of the feedback pieces we received for positive community was maybe bringing in that social emotional learning a little bit more into morning meeting and those skills, those soft skills. Rules being posted in the classroom, in the general buildings, just kind of that predictability environment. We do that well too. There was some feedback about being able to kind of streamline our rules and making sure that they kind of look the same across the district. And so we've had conversations around that too.
So what they're talking about there is currently thinking about how we've supported kids when I first came to the district. When you walked into a building, if you're at one building, you might see our cats on the wall. You might walk into another building and see cats. You might walk into another one and see another acronym used. And their feedback was thinking about kind of the trajectory of a student. When they go into our schools, they should have a similar experience of expectations in all of our elementaries, so that when they hit Lenahan, they're not starting over with yet another set. And then Miller has another set, and the high school has another set. So we have started that work on putting our district on the same system.
Building the common language of expectations. So we can go to the next one. Effective management, this kind of blends in the same realm in terms of, having established routines, having established procedures. It also talks about like the classroom arrangements. Are kids able to move around freely? Are they able to have that choice in learning? It all also went down to having signals in the classroom. So it's that fundamental piece of what are the expectations and what is that predictability in the classroom. And are there materials, the organization? So do the classrooms look organized? Are they welcoming? Are they inviting for our students to feel like they're ready to learn in those rooms? We scored exceptionally high. I mean, they were all above 2s. So we did really well on the effective management piece. I know our consultant consistently said it is very evident the strong leadership we have in our buildings, because that is a reflective directly to the effective management piece. Development and responsive classrooms. So this one is, our teachers allowing movement and play in the classroom. Are there visual cues in the classroom? So students, especially like our English language learners, do they have the visual cues to be able to see what it is they're learning? One of the biggest things about development in a responsive classroom was, do the students see themselves when they walk into the classroom? So again, that welcoming feeling, they can picture themselves. So the books that are in the classroom, are there pictures of all different colors and all different demographics? Do they see their names on the walls? Do they see their jobs and their birthdays and things posted on the classroom walls? And the idea behind that development responsive is, can we walk in and see ourselves and have that voice in that classroom? Is there artwork? Is there work samples, shown so they can take pride in the work that they do? A lot of what we're looking at is, do they know the purpose, and then can they go back and reflect and know that they met those goals? So we did exceptionally well on this too. We have some areas, if you see like Lenahan 1.3, I mean, these were in the mid ranges. It was that piece of students not seeing themselves. And so how do we increase the, just letting students walk into a classroom and be able to see and feel like they're part of that community and part of that classroom? And we can go to engaging academics. This was another one. So engaging academics is the students know the goals, they know the purpose of learning. Are they engaged and are they motivated to learn? So that is our goal with engaging academics. Again, scoring really well. This one also takes into consideration the pedagogy of learning. And so, do you have an opening? Do you have that body? Do you have that closure? So if you think about like the school day for a student, they have that morning meeting, they have the closing circle at the end of the day. So when you start a lesson, are they having that kind of purpose, and then the learning, and then the ability to reflect? So that pedagogy structure of a strong lesson. And so that would be where we pull in integrated interactive modeling and trying to make our curriculum engaging, and the students have choice and they have voice in that learning. So, and that's where we scored on that. And the last area for responsive classroom was the non-classroom spaces. Again, this was a lot of focus. If you think about the other areas, are they bleeding into the non-classroom spaces? So when students walk outside of those classrooms, are they still engaged learners? Are they following the rules and the expectations and the procedures? And we did score really well in terms of all of our buildings, just in what they're doing. I think we have room to grow, but it's a lot of that is that piece we talked about earlier with that common language and expectations. We see it the most at Lenahan, because I think the kids are coming into Lenahan and they're coming from different terminologies and languages and expectations. And so it's like a melting pot of what the school buildings were. So that would be an area of focus moving forward.
So where we head from here with responsive classroom is continuing professional development. We talk about the core training. One of the challenges is it's 4 consecutive full days. And so scheduling that when teachers are available can create challenges. Many times our teachers, they are electing to come in the summer and do that, and their feedback is incredible. But still, it's a time management piece. We're also going to continue to do continuous improvement, supporting them in the implementation, and looking for opportunities to give them feedback so they feel more and more comfortable with the approach. And we always are chasing funding sources. Right now, a lot of our social emotional learning is funded through grant opportunities just because we've brought it on so strongly in the last couple of years that we haven't found its home in our curriculum adoption cycle yet. So we've had some pretty big curriculum things going on over the last few years, and hopefully as we move forward, we'll find a middle road where some of it fits curriculum, some of it fits grant. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about what we do, Miller, MLA, and the high school. And I'm going to talk a little faster because I'm starting to color outside the lines, as Eric said. So capturing kids' hearts is an approach that we have worked at our secondary schools just because responsive classroom, at the time we brought it to the district, they had been working on a secondary model. They had not got it into place. So capturing kids' hearts is something we've been working with since the pandemic. Interestingly enough, we brought the trainers in for their 2 days. We gave them great content in January, and then everyone went home in March. So we had to pretty much start over once they came back. But with capturing kids' hearts, it really does look very similar in a lot of the regards to what we're just talking about. In the key practices are about building meaningful relationships with every student. It looks different, especially at the high school when you have a different group of kids coming in so often. So how do you quickly build relationships with them? Because you're not with them all day. You have a different group every 45 minutes to 90 minutes. How do we create an environment through the Excel model so that kids have ownership and a voice in that period of time? How do we help develop that self-management skill piece through social contracts so that kids know and teachers know what's expected? And how do we facilitate conflict management? Now, people hear that and they're like, conflict management. So in life, you are going to disagree with someone. Like, that's the nature of things. But how do you do it in a respectful way? So as we think about the 3 areas we're focusing on right now in CKH, it's the Excel teaching model, the social contracts, and the good things. And like we did before, I'm going to explain each of them as soon as Amy flips the slide for me. So the Excel model is really about what are those big landmarks we want to see in a classroom. And so Excel stands for engaging students by greeting them at the door. That's that welcoming them into the classroom piece. Explore is listening and attending to the personal, emotional, and academic needs of the students. We want to have good communication to let them know that we're there and we care. We want to empower them to use their do's and don'ts so that they are able to have those conflict management skills. And we want to launch them by wishing them well as they move on through the class. That social contract is really the classroom management agreement so that everyone's clear on what those rules look like. It tells everyone what's expected during that time. And they work on those and create those together. We also give students information and tools they need to hold themselves and others accountable. So part of the training is if a student catches a peer who's maybe not following those social contracts, how do they call them out in a way that maybe won't create excessive conflict, but has that accountability piece to it? And then the good things is the fun part. You know, how do you build that positivity to start your class? You've welcomed them coming in, but now let's talk about one positive thing. Let's get something out there real quick before we start our learning to get that positive no going forward. And it really does help build that classroom culture moving forward and also help kids learn about each other so that they know a little bit about what you're interested in, what is going well for you. So doing this work and staying focused on this work will really build a sense of community for our kids. And again, when you move into the upper grades, I think that becomes more and more challenging because they're moving across classrooms, they're moving across teachers, and they're seeing more and more kids than they normally would. We also want to try to reduce that emotional distress of our kids. Things that are predictable for them are easier for them. When they know what's expected of them and they know what people expect of them, it tends to make things easier for them. Also knowing that you're around people who understand you and can relate to you, even if they don't agree with you, reduces some of that distress as well. And we try to improve their social, emotional, behavioral health overall.
So, like Responsive Classroom, we are in the process of trying to kind of evaluate our implementation of CKH. And it's a little more difficult. We don't get a presenter to come in and, do a walkthrough for us first round and then give us a nice handy tool to evaluate. However, we do want to look at some things such as, the purpose of CKH is really to give students that they feel welcome in a classroom. And it's that model that teachers, it's more than building relationships. And I would say that a lot of teachers don't even like it when you say building relationships, but it's how well do you know your students and how welcome do they feel in that classroom. Part of that Excel model is when they greet them at the door, then that next one is, are you exploring the mood? So like if someone walks in distraught, are you noticing? And are you adapting to that? And so it's just knowing your kids and knowing what their, what it is when they walk into your classroom, what they need, what their needs are. So we have started, we're starting just by kind of getting some feedback from staff. We're in the process of collecting this data, so it's not complete yet. But out of those that have responded, we started just by kind of asking who has received the 2-day training for CKH. We do have quite a lot that have gone through. We did a recharge at the beginning of the year. Majority of our staff were part of that recharge implementation training process. And then we have the formal 2-day training. We did have, even our new staff last year went through that 2-day training. So.
And then we also asked them how many of them have been part, because there is a component about what we would call instructional coaching coming from the organization's called the Flippin' Group. So them having people come in and give us feedback about some of our work.
So from the survey, and again, we're using the survey as kind of a, to kind of the precedent for where we move with this and where we go forward with the kind of evaluating implementation. So the teachers that have incorporated strategies learn from CKH. Again, most of them have incorporated. I will say the general feedback when talking with staff and looking through the data on the survey, this isn't like, I feel like most teachers are saying this is not rocket science. This is no different. This is what good teachers do. And this is what I've been doing. I didn't need, I've always done this. So they are incorporating strategies just naturally because we have really good teachers and that's what they do. Next one. So evaluating the effectiveness, they believe the social climate in the classroom has improved. And I think what this does provide for them, again, looking at the survey results, is it gives them that predictability and, that ability to provide those social contracts, create those expectations in the classroom is where we're finding that social climate. Also just, knowing that students are being welcomed in the classrooms and starting on a positive note.
What is the 1 through 5 scale at the bottom?
1 meant they were not at all. They don't feel like it's improved it at all. And 5 was like, absolutely yes. And so your 4 and your 3 was like, 3 was kind of like, well, yes. And then 4 was yes. And then 5 was definitely yes. The other question we asked was, has it given you a framework to effectively address student behaviors? And I do feel this is where it gets a little tricky. It is a classroom management piece, but there are challenging behaviors when we get to the secondary level. And I think CKH is meant to be more proactive. There is a reactive component to that. I don't feel that this question necessarily addressed, are we, working and training on that second level of the, how to respond to the behaviors, but it is there. I just don't know if, based off the results, if staff feel like it is evident that that is addressing the challenging behaviors.
So, yep. So we're just beginning this review process again. If you look at the number of respondents, we have about a third of our staff members who we would want to respond who did in the survey. So we have a lot of work still to do to see really, is it effective? Is it not effective? Our next steps from here is if we find that through the rest of this process, CKH is really effective, then we're going to continue to look at that professional learning cycle and how we can support them in the core training. We're also going to look at our data and see where are those areas that we can spend more time and attention to and see if we can strengthen those areas. And anytime we're able to bring a consultant in to give us feedback, we always prioritize the things they share. If we find that through our review process that it's not being the most effective, then we need to dig further into it and try to understand why. What is going within the approach that's not a good fit? And once we realize that, then respond to whatever we figure out. And like I said before, we're always seeking funding to try to make sure we have a balance. These are great, approaches, but unfortunately, CKH doesn't allow trainers anymore. Like we couldn't become trainers of it. And Responsive Classroom has just moved to that as well. So we're always going to have to work with their organization. What questions do you have?
In terms of implementation at the elementary K-6 level, that didn't all get done like simultaneously at buildings, did it? I mean, certain buildings have been doing this for longer than other buildings. Am I right about that?
Correct. Yeah, so we have 2 buildings that have been implementing a little bit longer in terms of Fly 5. Responsive Classroom, they're about a year ahead of the other buildings.
And which buildings are those?
Anson and Franklin.
Okay.
So a few years back when the state performance profile first came out, one of the big indicators on that was that social emotional piece of it. And it was measured through the annual assessment. Conditions for learning. Thank you. Conditions for learning. So that was an area that Anson needed to focus on. So they used their support money to go through this learning. And as you've heard from their most recent presentation, they have turned it completely around just by focusing on this work. So they do have a little bit of head start, which was really helpful because now they have piloted some things and we've learned so we don't make some of those same mistakes that they do during that implementation piece.
I have more questions just about the secondary level and what, we see all the time. All of the schools that are coming in are talking about this, the programs that they're using at the elementary level. The secondary level, it's a little less, less structured or scripted or something. And that's kind of the area where you start to see more behavior issues and things like that as well. So I'm glad you're doing an evaluation to kind of look at how effective it is. It kind of looks like you're not at a point yet where you can say one way or the other. What other options would you look at?
Can I?
Go ahead.
So one option that we're considering moving forward is whether it's CKH or something else. I really want to bring it back down to what are the goals of our district and what do we want our students to be able to feel when they walk in a classroom, what do we want them to do. And the question right now is CKH allowing us to do that? Are they allowed to walk into the classroom and are teachers able to teach? Do they feel connected into the classrooms? Are they engaged learners? And, creating those goals, do we need a program, a script? And I think what we're seeing at the secondary level is the scripts aren't always effective. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So what else can we do? One thing I know that is important no matter what you do with SEL is that our students need to feel welcome and they need to feel like they belong. And so how do we work on creating those communities in our classroom and what does that look like? I don't think we take the goals away per se. It might just change the vehicle and how we get there.
So interestingly enough, even though secondary is probably the place that most people hear about behavioral challenges, it is also the area that has the least amount of research done in supporting instruction there. Some of that's by the nature of the way schools look and the way that classes go. Are you on a period schedule, a block schedule, a skinny schedule? The other part is that classroom management looks different for older kids than it does younger kids. When you start getting bodies coming through constantly in your classroom versus having the same group there all day or the same group there most of the day. So it's an area that we're constantly trying to get our mind around. We bring these approaches in because we know that through higher ed and talking with our new hires, they're just not prepared for classroom management when they show up on day 1 or even day 200. Like, they're still trying to figure out, how do I do all of this stuff and manage the kids? So we're trying to give them those skills and tools that we know that college isn't preparing them for. Okay, day 191.
I mean, to your point, Val, I think there are teachers that are very highly effective at creating a very welcoming community environment in their classrooms, right?
Exactly.
And they don't necessarily need a guidebook on how to do that, right?
Correct.
But certainly there are some things that you could glean from those highly effective teachers that would be applicable to everybody else,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. You would have we would look at our goals and our guiding principles, for example, greeting kids out the door, which is part of CKH. And it's that common that what teachers are doing that is working well, what our exceptional teachers are doing, and how can we coach and make that kind of uniform through it all. So no matter what classroom a student's walking into, they're greeted and, they feel welcome no matter what classroom they walk into. We're doing really good things. It's just how do we, systemize it.
Right.
I think a lot of the power at the secondary level, if implemented with fidelity, is the social contracts that the kids and the teachers develop together, and that just provides greater ownership of making sure that we're doing what we need to do individually, and if we're not, then other kids as well as the teacher can help bring attention to that.
It's the predictability, the accountability, and the ownership. So how do we bring that into every classroom as well?
And before we go, I do want to talk about a point of pride. So when the trainer came through and did the walkthroughs for Responsive Classroom, she met with us afterwards and did kind of a summary meeting. When she did the walkthrough of Franklin, she was so impressed by how effective their implementation was so early. Once a year across the nation, Castle has an annual conference called the Castle Exchange. And she invited us to go co-present this coming fall with them to talk about the great work Franklin has already done in such a short period of time. Mm-hmm. So we're looking forward to that opportunity of presenting with this organization.
Very nice.
Congratulations.
Tim and his team have worked very hard. Yeah.
It was the only school she said she's ever taken a picture of something like as a sample example to show other schools. And that was the accountability poster that they created for expectations. So.
Very nice. Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am here before you. The last 2 years, I've come before the board asking for sign-on bonuses for certain certified staff positions. And as I am posting them this year, keeping the same title, I realized I have not come forward to you for approval for next year. And so I am here requesting the same exact program that we currently have. It's a $5,000 sign-on bonus with a 3-year commitment, and there are payback requirements if they depart prior to those 3 years. So if they leave after 2 years, they owe us 1/3 of that, for example. However, I did add on here, so I took everything that we had the last 2 years. I did add music, art, and teacher librarians to that list. everything else you've seen in the past. And so I don't have data to say this is exactly the reason why people are coming. Anecdotally, I have heard, I was recently at the Nebraska Teacher Career Fair in Lincoln, and I saw an individual, people weren't really stopping by my booth, and I was trying to get them, and I was literally like, hey, we're cool. Like, Iowa's awesome. Come over here, let's chat. People just weren't extremely interested. Then there was one student who was in the corner on his phone, and they have really big name tags, and so I shouted his name. I was like, hey, come on over here, and he's like, okay. I said, have you thought about moving to Iowa? And he goes, actually, yeah, where are you guys? And I said, oh, we're kind of right in the middle. He goes, well, what about in relation to Ames? And I said, oh, it's literally just one road, and boom, you're there in like 30 minutes. And his fiance is going to Iowa State for grad school in the fall. So we got to talking, and I said, he's interested in a math position at the high school. I said, we have 3 of those openings right now. I said, we have a $5,000 sign-on bonus, plus we'll reimburse up to $2,500 for your moving. And he was just like, oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And he kind of perked up when I talked about the sign-on bonus and the moving incentive. That really seemed to he was already interested, but that was almost he said, oh, it's a little bit of a relief. That's kind of nice. So like I said, I can't really show you for sure that this is helping or that this has worked. I do feel it sets us apart in some ways, and I think anything we can do to try to, attract and retain great people is worth it. So that is why I have this before you.
Questions, comments?
With the staff that we currently have, whether it be art, music, some of those special skill trades, do any of our teachers have that right now where we can incentivize them to move to that, where maybe a math position is easier to hire than an art teacher or a music teacher?
So we are only offering this for new hires, with the exception of special ed. We will not only pay for some tuition for our teachers to get special ed endorsements, but we will also give them the sign-on bonus. But we are not offering the sign-on bonus to staff moving into these positions. So for example, tonight you approved Claire Wing, who's an instructional coach at Rogers, to go to the high school math. She would not receive that bonus. As far as are there teachers who have these endorsements, I don't know. I only keep track if they're endorsed for what they're teaching. So I'm not entirely, I can't really answer that 100%, but we only offer this for internal transfers if they're going into special ed.
Another question I have is, for example, be music, art, or special ed. I think about, an airplane, these airlines, whether Delta, whoever, they overbook stuff, right? They put all these pastures on this airplane, overbook it, hoping that maybe some won't show up or they'll come another day. Do we ever get in that position with it, whether it be art, music, where we have too many applicants, where can we just hire them and hoping that we'll fill them somewhere else?
Oh, okay. So about 10 years ago, I've spoken to principals. About 10 years ago, we'd get about 70 applicants for a classroom position. It's not the world we're living in where we have multiple people applying. We've had, for example, a 7th grade art position open the entire year. We've had a band position open the entire year. And so, unfortunately, we don't run into that often, if ever. And I will say this, the principals are phenomenal about, I interviewed this person and they weren't my top candidate for this reason, but I think they'd be great in your building. Like they're really good at passing around the candidates when possible. And the hard part going in right now is, we don't know what resignations are coming necessarily. We'll really start to see those resignations once I issue contracts, hopefully next month. But a lot of times they're not informing us that they're leaving until they have that contract and that 21-day deadline to return it. So we don't have all of these positions open right now, but I'm putting them on there because they've been there in the past and they're historically hard to fill in case we have those openings. Does that make sense? So I wish we were in that situation where we had so many, but we're not.
Generally, that's a bit of a challenge financially to have more teachers than you have capacity to hire. You don't want to be in that situation for very long.
I wish we were facing that.
So this is maybe kind of similar to Zach's question, but this list in the past was list of roles that we had still had open a year later, and we couldn't find people to fill those jobs, and so we started offering bonuses. How many of these are roles that we
have had open for the whole year? We had a teacher librarian position, vocal music, that's the one we had open, we couldn't hire. I do have a counselor on here and not on that list, but that is one of the positions that's been open. I'm hopeful there. That's why I really didn't put that one on the list. We've had ELA open all year. We've had math. We've had multiple special ed. We've had 7th science, 7th art all year. That dual language social studies teacher, unfortunately, has been open for multiple years. So, several.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, never mind, that was
So it
French.
was vocal, not band, right?
Sorry, it
Yeah.
was vocal. I said band originally. It is vocal. And that was a split position between Lenahan and Miller. And thankfully, we've had Amy O.C. stepping in. We provided her a stipend to coordinate concerts and some work there.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the $5,000 sign-on bonus for the listed positions as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Wise, Stanley, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for not making me a liar, since I've already told a few people about that, so thank you.
Nothing from the kids this evening, so we'll skip right to the book.
Yeah. Feel free to jump up front, guys, if you'd like.
One of the things I noted that I appreciated was how he spoke to, this was chapter 6, I believe, he spoke to how, reframing mistakes and looking at them more as an opportunity to grow and learn. And every time I hold pre-expulsion meetings with students, I talk about that and how, hopefully one day we look at this as a mistake, but, again, you did something bad, but that doesn't make you a bad person, and this doesn't define who you are. It just kind of reminded me of the conversation that I have with those students of, didn't make the best choice, but you can grow, and as long as you learn and grow from this, it'll be a blip. So that resonated with me. I'm pointing to you, Shauna.
I think the timing was good for having like the MLA presentation and talking a lot about the importance of authentic learning and making learning relevant, because obviously at MLA, most of those kids, as Eric mentioned, have not been successful in the traditional or conventional book learning way of doing things, and so they do things a little bit differently then. And they also talk a lot about the importance of trying to provide a plethora of extracurricular opportunities, whether they be athletic, music, clubs, just something else that can kind of engage students and give them extra reason to want to be at school, because maybe they're not as excited about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they know that in order to be in those other things, they need to do what they need to do. to at least stay in school and finish school and that sort of thing, and position themselves for whatever they are planning to do post-secondary.
Well, I was really impressed with his like ability to be flexible or fluid with kind of whatever life handed him.
To pivot.
To pivot is yes, a synonym.
The title of the book.
And I guess everybody's a little bit different, but that would have been very hard for me. You know, you just kind of sometimes look at life as really linear. And I think a lot of the students that we serve, kind of similar to what Theron was saying, like, it's a really important life lesson to see that not everything is linear, and you always have to kind of be creative in looking at the talent that you have to potentially continue to kind of survive. Apparently, he was like given a lot of talent because this dude can do about everything. It was pretty amazing just to continue reading that he can kind of fit in with the Hansons and then go fly an airplane. So I thought, you know, he clearly has a drive to and no fear, right, when it comes to taking risks. And I think that, you know, as we get older, sometimes those risks can be harder to take. So it was really kind of inspiring to see that he can persevere and turn with whatever, pivot with whatever life gives him. And our kids do it, our community does it, we've done it, you know, together as a team. So it's kind of interesting. Did you read it, Zach?
I did. I was intrigued after, but yeah, shut up. I'm reading it right now. Most important lesson.
The summary. He's reading the summary pages.
You know, I was intrigued. I have my pilot's license, so it's neat his perspective of his being a pilot and you know, the emotions that he went through. And so it's kind of neat on my scale to, you know, connect on that way. So.
Have you been in a rock band?
I mean, because
Well,
I'm starting to see a lot of.
I know.
Maybe a pop band? I don't know.
My kids, you know, play the drums pretty hard, and now the saxophone today. So I'm a little, you know.
So they're learning how to.
I'm learning. Yeah.
I like how you didn't shy away from, you know, the hard things. And I think that that's something that's very valuable for our children. So, especially in our family. Don't be afraid.
I think how Shauna said it, like, we always see things so linear. And, you know, now as my kids are ending high school and moving on, my husband is very linear. And so when they start talking about, well, maybe I want to do healthcare, well, maybe I want to do law, his brain, like, blows up. Like, I thought we had a path. I thought that's the way we were going to go. And I'm like, you need to read this. It doesn't happen. And so I think that's very true. It's hard for us to think like that.
I think it's also important that we recognize the privilege he came from too, though, as we're, you know, reading about these amazing life experiences. And, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, how many people can quit and move to France? And, you know, so just, I think it's an incredible story, and I'm so excited for him to come. He's a really, really engaging speaker, but we just can't forget the place of privilege he came from too.
Well, that's one of the things for me, like, I don't relate to what he's talking about in many cases. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, our kids don't relate to, you know, can't relate to these stories that he's telling. So how do you pull the pieces out of this that are like, what are we actually going to do with this information? Are we reading this book because it's a cool story? Or are there certain things we're able to pull out of here that we're going to be able to apply it with our students, right?
I think for sure if you hear him speak, those concerns will be calmed.
I agree with that.
And because I didn't hear him speak.
Yeah,
so
and
coming
I
from a
think,
little bit of a different perspective than all of you that heard him.
And I think a lot of our kids, and this is, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of our kids, given where they're coming from and their home life, and not having that clear, linear way through life can understand. Even kids not knowing, you know, I'm a junior in high school and I don't know what the heck I'm going to do after next year. You know, that I'm going to try this or I'm going to do this. But no matter what, you know, him weaving in, you know, you have to be dedicated. You have to put your all in. You have to make mistakes. I think will resonate with everybody,
And
in
I
my
think
opinion.
there were 3 of our student school board members there, right? They were very engaged and very much related to him.
And they
so-
don't know Hanson, so.
No.
I mean, the points, when he pulls everything together at the end, I'm like, okay, got it. But the stories, when I'm reading the stories, I'm like, this is not real life. Nobody has, I mean, this gentleman did actually, but like nobody has this life. This is not a relatable life story to me.
I think when we hear the students talk about how they feel about it, helps too.
Yeah, they're not here today,
I know.
so.
Yeah, so I like when we have their perspective on this too. So I agree with you. It's how do they relate to it? How can they glean from this? And
Well, a lot of our kids are working in some way, shape, or form at a very early age. And a lot of what he talks about is going from serious affluence to not so affluent, needing to work, learning how to build positive relationships, learning how to build professional skills, and then becoming confident enough to take the initiative. Because a lot of the opportunities he's had were only because he took the initiative to seek out opportunities like with that record executive and that sort of thing, who he knew through someone else he knew, through work he had done as a young kid. And so, yeah, I do think that there's ways that they'll be able to relate, and if nothing else, to hopefully dream, you know, develop some great goals and passions, and then figure out, you know, how to take advantage of opportunities to pursue them.
Anything else? Okay. Randy wants to talk about the budget process.
It's the highlight of everybody's night. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, this is the second, number 2. The
Oh,
Special
cool.
Olympians were
No,
the
that-
highlight.
No,
right
that's
now.
true.
Sorry.
No, that's fair. I'll take that. I will definitely take second place to those guys. So, all right. Yes, I am here to talk about the certified budget process. So, Amy, if you want to go and go to the next slide. So, some of you have seen this in the past. We're in budget season. So, you'll be hearing a lot from me over the next month or two on this whole process. But tonight we're just going to start the building blocks, and I'll update everyone on some new pieces to the puzzle this year. So the certified budget process, in a nutshell, it's twofold. It's to meet the statutory process and timeline for establishing and certifying the property tax rate for the fiscal year 25, the 24-25 school year. It's also to publish estimated consolidated expenditures for various district funds, which the general fund is only a small, or one component of that. Next slide. Yep. State aid funding. So the budget is driven by 2 major factors, one being certified enrollment and the other being SSA, or state supplemental aid. SSA for FY25 has not been set yet. The governor recommended 2.5% during her budget proposal in January. Current Iowa law says that that's supposed to be set within 30 days of that. 30 days was February 8th. There is a bill in the House, I believe, right now saying that they will set it at some point this session, so we'll see what that amounts to. So right now, assuming a 2.5% SSA, that's an increase to our regular program district cost per pupil from $76.41 to $78.32, or an increase of $191 per student. There is a House bill out there right now. I believe it's tied to the teacher pay that is proposing a 3% SSA. So assuming that were to pass, that would be an increase of $229 per student. But at this point, we will wait and see what happens down with the folks in Des Moines. So next slide, Amy. I won't spend much time on this. You guys have seen this before. I did change the scale a little bit. Hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys. No changes really. I mean, you've seen this before. Our certified enrollment did drop from last year from 5374 to 5352. That is the number that the certified budget is driven off of. The served enrollment, that includes our net or open enrolled in and open enrolled out students. So our current served enrollment is 4922. Next slide. This a little hard to see. The Excel sheet is also attached in the agenda as well. But while the state may set SSA at 2.5%, that doesn't necessarily equate into a 2.5% increase for the district. Again, that certified enrollment piece comes into play. So with that drop in certified enrollment, a 2.5% SSA actually results in 2.07% new money for the district right now, which would be a little over $849,000. If we were to get 3% SSA, our new money would increase to 2.56%, which would be just a little over $1 million of new money. But again, we will see what happens with the folks down in Des Moines. Next slide. Tax rates and how it works with the certified budget. Tax rates are a function of the district's taxable valuation of property. A district with lower valuation, such as ours, valuation per student tends to have higher tax rates because, again, tax rates have to work a lot harder to generate the money needed per the school finance formula. So a majority of the district's tax rate is not subject to local discretion. So there's 400 plus lines in the school finance formula. We have control over 7. Next slide. Property valuations, this is just a chart that shows, I know that chart's hard to read, but you can see the increase over the last few years. I will point out on this slide though that, and it's because I've seen and heard some rumblings in the community, so I want to just take the open forum opportunity to address it. So last spring, property valuations, you all got your statements. You saw the significant increase in property valuations. On average, there was a 20% increase in property valuations. However, school districts and the tax rates operates off of taxable valuations. So while that 20% increase, there's a rollback that's applied to it. So our property valuations, the taxable property valuations only increased 8% this year. 5-year historical average has been about 1.8%. So beyond this next fiscal year, we're gonna probably expect to see that scale back from the 8% because the 8% is that kind of that sticker shock from the sharp increases in the assessed valuations last year. Going beyond next year, we're probably going to be looking at 2 to 3% increases, just kind of that it's going to reset back to kind of what we've normally seen the last several years.
Would it be fair to say that that has not kept pace with inflation? That would be very fair to say. On top of SSA, which has not kept up with inflation. So, and then the next two slides, Zach, you had asked me about TIF at our finance committee meeting, so I threw in a couple slides. So, fortunately for the school district, the TIF valuations do not reduce the revenue that we receive with that school finance formula with TIF properties. How that works is that there are mechanisms in place where state aid or functions of the school finance formula kick in additional property taxes for that. The only portion of revenue that's actually reduced through TIF for the district is the parole levy. So on the next slide, you'll see the actual numbers for that. So for FY23, there was $227,000 of TIF revenues, or revenue for TIF projects. 81,000 or 36% was backfilled through state aid. 143,000 or 63% was backfilled through additional property tax levies. So we did have to increase taxes by 12 cents for that. So for example, our tax rate for this year is $15.99. If we didn't have those TIF projects, tax rate would have been $15.87. So of the TIF revenue, $2,049 was what we were out.
Randy, can I ask, what does TIF stand for?
Tax increment financing. So there's special projects that the city can identify as, we want to TIF these properties so that we can basically provide economic development to and tax breaks to get that. Yep. Next slide. I skipped one. There we go. Just again, this is just a nice, that taxable valuation, student rich, property poor that I referenced earlier. We have property poor, but we have a lot of kids. So our tax dollars have to work a lot harder to generate what we need for the current year, we rank 6th lowest out of 327 districts. And Okoboji reclaimed the top spot with that highest taxable valuation of 1.5 million per student. And Atomwa is the lowest at 174,000. Next slide. Again, you guys have seen this before. This is just a nice reminder that we are not the only taxing entity that folks see. So we are a large piece of the tax levy authority in the city of Marshalltown, but there are other entities as well. And as I talk about these new processes coming up, folks will start to see this a little bit more here in the next few weeks. So on the next slide, changes for this upcoming year. The main, or one of the first ones being that the certification due date has been pushed back from April 15th to April 30th. While that's all well and dandy, I find that to be deceiving because there are extra steps in the process to where we have to finalize things about a month sooner than what we normally would have in the past. The biggest thing will be we have to hold an additional meeting and a public hearing on a property tax statement that will be sent out by the county auditor by March 20th. We cannot hold that first public hearing until at least March 25th. We have to give the county auditor at least 5 days to get those tax statements mailed out. Yeah, we have to submit the information to the Department of Management and the county auditor by March 15th. Next slide. Documents for the public hearing will be a property tax hearing statement, which is basically a summary document that will get mailed to all residents. It'll be mailed by the county auditor, and county auditor must mail the statements by March 20th. There will also be a property tax notice detail, which is basically the same thing as the tax hearing statement or that summary, but the detail is what we as the district are responsible for. That must be published in the newspaper as well as on our website and social media pages, and has to meet the same requirements for publication as our prior public hearings do. This notice will set the maximum amount that the district can levy in property tax dollars, not necessarily the property tax rate. So that's just a nice little picture of what it looks like. Next slide. So on the property tax hearing statement that the county auditor will send out, it'll provide a breakdown of the current tax rate, the effective tax rate, and the proposed tax rate. Obviously, the current tax rate is where things are at today. The proposed tax rate is what we will be proposing to levy for next year. The effective tax rate basically takes the current year property tax and applies next year's valuations to it. So it basically shows, okay, what would your tax rate look like today if the valuations that we're using for the fiscal year 25 were to take effect. On the next slide, on the property tax hearing statement, it'll require taxing authorities to provide a reason if there's an increase in the property taxes being levied. I can say that our tax rate is likely going to decrease for next year, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But if our tax rate was increasing, we would need to put an explanation into why it is increasing. Next slide. There will also be a sample on the statement sent out by the county auditors to show what the impact will be on a residential property valued at $100,000 as well as a commercial property. It also assumes that there's no credits applied, such as homestead, military, or elderly. Commercial and residential are going to look the same because on commercial properties, there's a rollback. The residential gets the residential rollback on the first $150,000 of assessed value. So they might need to look at changing that for next year because it's going to look the same for both residential and commercial on the statement. Next slide. So the property tax notice, again, this is what we are responsible for. It's going to basically take that summary statement, break it down into individual levies and details, and that has to be posted on our district website and social media sites. Again, that'll be a separate hearing for that. So on the next slide, again, kind of similar, same as before. It's going to have that current year tax rate, the effective, and the proposed, but it's just going to break it down by each of our individual levies. So the general levy management fund, PEPL, debt service, etc. And next couple slides, just the timeline that we have outlined here. So on March 4th, I'll be coming back to the board. I will provide a more in-depth budget presentation for next year, showing what we're looking at as far as our tax rate and what we're proposing to levy for next year. We'll also include updated forecast projections on that time. So at that meeting, I'll be looking to get feedback from the board to see if there's any changes that need to be made, because March 4th meeting is our next meeting before I have to have the information submitted to the county auditor and the Department of Management for that first public hearing notice. So March 15th, that's all due to the county auditor. March 18th, we'll take board action to set a public hearing for the first hearing at our April 1st meeting. Next slide. There's the publication dates that we have to hit. March 20th is the last day for the county auditor to mail the statements out. April 1st is when we will plan to hold our first of 2 public hearings. Also at the April 1st meeting, we'll take action to set the public hearing for April 15th for what you've normally seen in the past, the regular certified budget public hearing. And then publication dates there. April 15th, we'll hold the second public hearing, and then same as in years past, usually after that second, or what's been the normal public hearing, the board will then take action to formally adopt the budget for the upcoming school year. So I think I colored within the lines of my time. So any questions for me?
2 things I noticed. I appreciate the presentation. The first thing was the open enrollment. The last 2 to 3 years, I believe we have 78 kids coming back here. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
we've been closing the gap the last few years. Yep.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, we've been having fewer go out and more coming in most of the time that I've been here the past 8 years. I think we're doing a better job of marketing the great things that our district has to offer, particularly as it relates to the secondary level, I think. I don't think we were doing a very good job of that, so parents didn't know. They weren't able to compare the experiences that their kids would have. So we try to do a better job of that, because oftentimes those decisions are made as their children are heading into preschool versus high school. So I think that's helped some.
The second thing that I guess I'm most excited about is our tax rate. The last 3-4 years has dropped from $18 and some change down to a little under $16. And looking at, I think it was slide number 11, compared to other entities across the city, we're one of the few that actually have gone down.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Anything else for Randy? Okay. A lot of additional paperwork this year.
Thanks for reminding me.
And more mail for everybody. Everybody loves getting mail. Hi, Amy.
Hi. So this is actually a continuation from last board meeting. Basically, what I presented last board meeting for the safety grant was all of the hardware that would need to be put into the buildings, and I just wasn't quite ready. I wanted to get it ordered right away, but I wasn't quite ready with what we were going to decide based on labor and who was going to install them. So I got a couple quotes. One was from the company that actually sells us the parts. That was about $75,000. And then this is from another company, a guy more local who has done a really great job on many of our doors. So this is mostly like door access that he's working on. So this would be covered by the safety grant, but I did want to go ahead and recommend that we use Central Iowa Tech rather than Convergent for the labor on all of the security measures I brought up last board meeting.
Randy, are 2 quotes sufficient for our policy and the safety grant?
Yes.
Questions? Then we need a motion to approve Central Iowa Tech quote in the amount of $49,990 for labor and installation of the AVA surveillance system as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Faultus Wise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Policies.
Randy, do you want me to run down these?
I can do it, so it's got my name on them, that's fine. For 70501R3, purchasing bidding regulation, amounts that were previously presented as proposed are amounts that will be presented as current. That's just updating some of the wording on that policy, as well as updating the amounts under Iowa code. I guess I'll also preface this that there's been no changes since the last meeting to any of these policies. So on 90501E1, use of school facility form application, as well, all of those 905 policies, that's just updating those policies to add the Orpheum and Stadium to those policies to applicable for renting those facilities and the rates for those use of those facilities.
Any questions about any of those first reading policies?
So our recommendation would be to approve and waive the second reading?
Yep. So we need a motion to amend 705-1R3, 905-1E1, 905-1E3, 905-1R2, and waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Stanley Faultus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Then Sarah, you had initial review policies.
Yes, I have 6 policies. 705.9, death of a student, staff member, board approved council or board director. No changes to that. We can mark it as reviewed. 706.1, payroll periods. No changes to that. Mark as reviewed. 706.2, payroll deductions, no changes, mark as reviewed. 706.3, pay deductions, no changes, mark as reviewed. 706.1, or .3 R1, no changes, mark as reviewed. 707.1, secretary's monthly report, no changes, mark as reviewed.
Any questions for Sarah? Okay, they'll all be marked as reviewed then. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Reminders, we've got our next board meeting is March 4th. Looks like I get to review policies. No school presentation at that meeting. Miller will be here for the March 18th meeting, but it sounds like we'll get to hear another budget presentation.
So that's exciting. Okay.
You're welcome.
There are some committee meetings coming up in March, so just be aware of those. And then there's a facilities meeting this week, Wednesday.
Benefits
And
committee tomorrow night.
this is hot off the press, but we will be participating in a community presentation forum on PEPL and Lost Sunday at 3 o'clock at the public library. So Chief Tupper had reached out asking if we wanted to partner with them in providing that presentation. They had given one just on Lost Saturday, I think, afternoon. So we are going to co-present, Randy and I, with Chief Tupper and whomever, I think maybe one of the council men. It'll be another opportunity to get the word out there. Have you seen anything posted on that yet, Abby? We'll be sharing whatever gets posted. We worked with Chief Tupper on a social media announcement anyway with it.
Okay. Any items anyone would like to see on a future agenda? What have we done this evening to improve education for the students in Marshalltown?
I think the Special Olympics, you know, we've had several people come in, like Theron, you mentioned earlier, several people come and talk to the board about having an interest in seeing something like that going on in the school district, and having people step up and being willing to coordinate and coach that, I think is a great testament just to the quality of people that we have in the district that are willing to do those extra activities and keep students engaged in our
And
school.
kudos to Matt for helping facilitate those teachers and getting this put together, and also working in collaboration with Park and Rec, who already were doing some of the programming. So now we've got two different entities that are doing different parts of the programming, which creates a more holistic opportunity for those kids and their families. So,
Dr. Schutte, with it being not necessarily a new program, but a newer program, these kids, do they have jerseys? Do we have jerseys for them for this tournament coming up at all? Or?
Yes. Since Nora's gonna yell at me, I'll come up.
See, we just got shirts ordered for them, right? I thought I saw that. So part of being part of a unified school is Special Olympics Iowa provides a minimal level of funding to do things like this, to get some equipment and jerseys. They came in last week. They look great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great question. That was a good question.
Good, Nora?
Thank you. Us hard of hearing people appreciate that.
Well, I thought it was good to hear Matt, yours, and Val's presentation on the SEL and implementation of that, and how that's going. That was good.
there is some legislation out there to abolish the opportunity to do SEL, which, you know, our district's been engaged in that work for a long time, and thankfully we were engaged prior to the tornado and the derecho, as well as the pandemic, which allowed us to kind of significantly up our game in the last 5 years or so. So hopefully we'll be able to successfully advocate for the importance of it, especially as it relates to helping kids be able to navigate or pivot when challenges and adversity comes around, which all of us face at one time or another.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Fault is Wall. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. And then we're